some of these things where there were key critical turning points that had nothing to do with Elon Musk. You know, the key takeaway with Marx was this point, which was that there are no new problems. You have to look at the history. You have to dissect it. You have to diagnose it properly. If you don't diagnose things properly, you will not get the solution. You won't be able to fix it. Or even worse, if you diagnose the problem incorrectly, you can make the problem worse. And this is what we're seeing, which is that people are just operating on these premises that, premises that are faulty. Okay, which was this idea that the data was correct. The data's not correct. So researchers have been researching Twitter since they, first started with their API, their open API. But the data's wrong because it's been manipulated by bots since, for years and years and years and years and years. How can you do research or anything meaningful if you, first of all, it's just being manipulated, if you're banning everybody who might express a more complex view, and you are just trying to control narratives? It self-perpetuates, which is, if you're in the business, this is why narrative is so fucking dangerous and sinister. This narrative control on major public spaces. This is why the real threat to democracy is this model and these blue checks. You control the narrative, so you suppress voices. Then those who are getting the data don't have meaningful data. So even those who are good faith and think they're doing good work are working with faulty data. So we're coming to the wrong conclusions, and then it just keeps spiraling in that direction. And this is why making sure that with all these data sets, making sure that those things are as open and free and accurate as possible is really, really important, because researchers have been relying on Twitter. But honestly, if you're researching anything on Twitter and trying to make any kind of conclusions about sentiment analysis, if you're not controlling for the bots, and if you're not controlling for the fact that I'm not gonna fucking keep harking back to it, because it's one of those key examples, which is the gender issue, the trans issue, which is that you can see how a junior marketer who doesn't know what they're fucking doing goes on Insights and goes, this is popular. Oh, look, even the most savvy marketer will look at Insights, look at data, go, oh, look, 70% of people support this idea that trans women are literally women, not women for all intents and purposes, because they've been bullied and suppressed and mass reported and all of these other tactics through various bad actors that are trying to manipulate this debate in various directions. And then you have data that you can then use to rationalize you being an idiot. Okay, this is where this is where the difference between someone who can look at an EKG and go, there's nothing wrong with you, and a fucking 20-year cardiologist who takes one look at the graph that no one else sees and says that person's about to die. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay, and that's where it becomes this spiral, and this is where we've sort of gone into this spiral of research based on faulty data that is heavily manipulated. And yes, there have been some controls. However, the extent to which those controls are in place is limited. There you go. I'm like Dr. House, but for the internet, especially social. Okay, there you go. I'm telling you, this was the big problem. So, but it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But that's obviously for someone like the US Democratic Party, where they're very heavily invested in this war machine, people with all the money, all the corporations, when you've got a kleptocracy fucking running the shit, okay? And those who cheer on totalitarianism and cheer on authoritarianism and gaslight you and make you feel crazy for having normal objections to a breach of your civil rights or whatever you feel, okay? Or if you're anti-war, again, it's only because when you find yourself up against a thing, up against something that is dogma and up against something that is being used in this fashion, much like the trans issue, it's got nothing to do with trans people. It is it is just a weapon that is used to divide us. There is a solution moving forward. Calm down. That's a whole other thing.